A constitution is often imagined as a sacred legal text frozen in time. But India's constitution behaves differently. It breathes, negotiates, adopts, and occasionally fights with history itself. And nowhere is this more visible than in constitutional amendments. But every major constitutional amendment in India is not merely a legal change, it is a political economy document. It reveals who controls resources, how power is distributed, what economic model the state prefers, and which social groups are rising or resisting. In other words, if budgets reveal the government's yearly priorities, constitutional amendments reveal the republic's long term ideological shifts. Take the early decades after independence. India adopted a state led developmental model inspired by socialism, welfare economics, and anti colonial redistribution. This political economy was reflected in the First Amendment 1951, which restricted certain freedoms to enable land reforms and inserted the Ninth Schedule to protect redistributive laws from judicial scrutiny. The message was clear: social revolution would take priority over absolute property rights. If we pause and observe the larger pattern here, constitutional amendments often emerge when economic transformation collides with existing power structure. This became even sharper through the 24th, 25th, and 42nd Amendments during Indira Gandhi's era. Parliament asserted its power to amend fundamental rights, curtail judicial review, and inserted terms like socialist into the preamble. These amendments reflected a centralized political economy where the state sought dominance over institutions, planning, and resource distribution. But then came another turning point, the post 1991 liberalization era. India's economy gradually shifted from centralized planning towards market oriented reforms, globalization, and private capital expansion. Interestingly, constitutional amendments also evolved accordingly. The 73rd and 74th Amendments promoting local governance aligned with decentralized development models. The 101st Amendment introduced GST reflected the rise of a unified national market economy. The cooperative federalism became economically necessary because fragmented taxation hindered economic integration. And here lies an important insight. Economic reforms often require constitutional restructuring. Similarly, reservation related amendments such as the 77th, 81st, 93rd, and 103rd Amendments reveal how constitutional change mediates social justice demands within a changing economy. As economic growth expanded opportunities unevenly, political mobilization by backward classes, Dalits, and economically weaker sections shaped affirmative action policies. This demonstrates that India's political economy is not only about markets versus state, it is also about representation, dignity, and access to public resources. Constitutional amendments have also reflected tensions between liberty and state authority. The 44th Amendment rolled back several emergency era excesses after public backlash against authoritarian centralization. In effect, political economy here intersected with democratic legitimacy. Citizens accepted state interventions but not unlimited concentration of power. Contemporary amendments continue this pattern. The 102nd and 105th Amendments on OBC identification reflect federal tension over welfare distribution. The 106th Amendment reserving seats for women indicates growing recognition that economic participation and political representation are interconnected. Critics, however, warn against excessive amendment frequency and political opportunism. Some amendments appear driven less by constitutional necessity and more by electoral calculations or short term political pressures. The Keshwananda Bharati judgment in 1973 therefore introduced the basic structure doctrine, ensuring that temporary parliamentary majorities cannot fundamentally alter constitutional identity. And that doctrine itself reflects India's political economy anxieties. How do you allow social transformation without allowing institutional destruction? Ultimately, constitutional amendments act like political fingerprints of different eras. They record the shifting balance between center and states, markets and welfare, liberty and authority, elites and marginalized groups. Because India's constitution was never meant to be static stone, it was designed as a living negotiation between democracy and development. And perhaps that is the genius of the Indian constitutionalism. It changes with society, yet constantly argues with the direction of change itself.